Is Umar the next big thing? And should Tony Ferguson be put out to pasture? Before we get into that, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe as we have brand new videos every single week. So this is a nice change of pace for Mark and I, because we don't usually cover fight nights because we're dirty casuals. But this fight night is just too big not to talk about. So Mark, in the main event, we have Cory Sandhagen facing off against Umar. This is a very big jump in the rankings for Umar. If he gets the win here on Saturday night, do you think that moves him into a title shot?
Absolutely. Cory Sandhagen has been stagnant in his position. Whether he loses or wins, he always seems to pull it back. And a win here for Umar could solidify him a shot against Sugar Sean O'Malley or Merab later on down the line.
Yeah.
This is a big test for Umar. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's undefeated and he has looked great. In his last outing, he nearly got finished. And Cory Sandhagen, don't forget the height difference in these two. It could be on display here. What a great main event. I believe it was rescheduled. It was supposed to happen earlier in the year, but this has been a rescheduled event. What a cracking fight night card, though, the entire card.
It is literally
not just the
stacked.
main event. This isn't main event heavy, is it?
No, it's huge. It's definitely huge. But let's stay on the main event just for a little bit, and then we'll chat about the others. And with Cory Sandhagen, it's interesting that he's even taking this fight at all. I'm not quite sure what's in it for him. You know, if beating number 10 means almost nothing for his career, do you think maybe the UFC have said, look, Cory, if you get this win here, you will be next in line for a title shot? Because it kind of feels like if you look at the top contenders and stuff, it feels like Cory is up for a title shot anyway, right?
It does, but he'll be handsomely rewarded, whatever it is, whether it's a title shot or something, because at the minute, with everyone else being tied up or everyone else of name value being tied up or having a fight scheduled, and Umar being the up and coming steam train that is coming up right now, for him to extinguish that's got to mean something, surely. You know, as in, like, look, this is the top of the division here. There's levels to this game. You can't just come up here and, try and grapple with everyone like you have done before. I think there's a lot to prove for both guys here, to be honest. Yeah. Cory could do with another win, I believe, to solidify his name as one of the top contenders and very, very shortly be seeing a title shot. And Umar could do with breaking through and now is exposed himself to the top of the division. They're essentially the same goals, but Cory's just been at this position a lot longer.
Definitely. And I think it's that name value that Umar's got, hasn't it? You know, you're Khabib's cousin, and it brings some weight to it. It brings eyes to you. So, yes, fine, he's probably going to get special treatment in that sense, because if he does win, he's likely going to get a title shot. And I think the same for Cory. But, Mike, would you rather see Cory versus O'Malley or Umar versus O'Malley or the dreaded Merab versus O'Malley?
Well, we've spoke for a while now, and I think Cory Sandhagen versus Sean O'Malley is a bit of a dream fight.
Yeah.
Just because they're both exactly the same height. I do think Sean O'Malley is a lot better and a lot more well-rounded than Cory Sandhagen, but it's one of those fights where you're like, I can't believe these two are bantamweights. Put them together. Let's see what happens. Get them together. You know, they're both taller than DC, who was a heavyweight. Let's see who the best lanky bastard is in the bantamweight division.
Yeah, it'd be great, wouldn't it? It'd be a fantastic kickboxing match. It'd be just so fun. But often the case is, isn't it, when strikers fight strikers and grapplers fight grapplers, they tend to swap over. So maybe we might see both these guys grapple with each other. It'd be super interesting. But one more on the main event, right? So, Mark, Cory Sandhagen versus Umar. What's your prediction for this fight and why?
Well, it's a 5-rounder, isn't it? I'm going to give the edge to Umar. Honestly, I think he's just going to be able to not even grind him down, just keep him there. I think it's going to be quite a dull fight. Now, don't get me wrong, every single time I've said that, I've been proved so wrong. So here's me hopefully jinxing myself. We get a banger of a main event. But I think Umar's just going to be able to keep him against the fence. The strength's going to be too much. Don't forget, he's a Nurmagomedov. He's going to be ridiculously strong as well. And I don't think Cory's really going to have an answer for the grappling that Umar will offer.
Yeah, I'm feeling exactly the same thing. I'm going to go 48-47 Umar. I think what's going to happen is Cory might get around near the start, first or second, then get dominated for most of the rest of the fight. Then his coach is going to say, right, We're in the fifth and final round. You're down. You need a finish. And he's going to start headhunting, getting out loads of strikes, and then finally get another final round. I think that's what's going to happen. A decision win for Umar. But you never know. Like we were saying before, Umar didn't look great in his last fight and he almost got finished. And with that big height difference, maybe Cory Sandhagen could just snipe him and get him out of there. But then, Mark, in the co-main event, we have Shara Magomedov versus Michael Ozacek. Ozacek? I don't know. I'm not saying any more of these names. I'm not interested.
Just say it, Michael. We'll just go with that.
Michael versus Shara, right?
Well,
What's interesting,
Shara,
though?
he's been active. He's a very active boy. He's undefeated. You know, you tune in for this boy, don't you?
Yeah.
You don't want. Obviously, we won't go into it too much, but obviously, the appearance wise, it just makes your head turn a little bit, doesn't it? But then watch him
The
in
old
action.
Cyclops.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was going for a more PC approach there, Dwayne. We'll just call him Michael Bisping, all right? So
Ginger Bisping.
yeah, we'll go with that. Yeah. But in that regard, as in you watch him actually in action, he puts it on his opponents, and there's a reason he's undefeated. The co-main event on a big fight night, he's got a huge opportunity here, put himself right in the mix of middleweight contention. I think he's going to be able to do it. Do you have any sort of predictions for this weekend?
Yeah, I think Shara is going to get the win. I think Michael, as good as he is, he's a can to be crushed, isn't he? He's there in this position to lose, and it almost feels that way. And I saw Michael the other day on Twitter saying that if he loses this fight, he's going to retire and he's going to leave combat sports. It feels like he knows he's coming to the end, and it's such a shame because he seems a nice guy, but some people just aren't made for it, are they?
I mean,
But
if you're saying that, you're halfway out the door anyway, aren't you?
exactly. You need that mental warfare, don't you? You need that mental strength to survive in a sport like this. And but Michael has got some great physical power, and he's a very strong striker. Like, look when he fought Kevin Holland recently. Yeah, he lost that fight, but he blitzed Kevin Holland on the feet. He dropped him instantly, and then he got caught up in a submission attempt, which I didn't really expect. But Shara is not a submission specialist. He's pretty crap on the ground as well himself. So, you never know. Maybe Michael will be able to get something done here. But at the start, Mike, you were saying how active Shara is. He fought just over a month ago. Do you think he's coming back perhaps a little bit too quickly? And do you think that could put him at risk in this fight?
Well, that was on the Rob Whittaker card, wasn't it? Literally not long ago at all. He didn't take much damage, I don't believe, and he must be feeling okay. This is what makes you tune in, though, isn't it? When someone's hungry and has something to prove, you know what? Like, I'm not just going to sit here for a payday. He could have just waited out. He could have waited another 6 months and no one would have batted an eyelid. But he
Yeah.
wants something to prove. It feels like the early days of Hamzat's career, and this
Yeah.
is what I'm happy for it. I'm well engaged as long as it's not, one of my favorites like Volk, who gets knocked out, and you just think, no, look, take as much time as what you need, Volky boy. But this
Yeah.
dude, welcome back.
100%. I think he's young enough, isn't he, that he can be fighting as often as possible. But to be fair, with his last fight, it was a little bit rough for him. I mean, it seemed quite a long labored war for over 3 rounds. Both guys did seem knackered. And I think that's more of it. It's the physical toll. Like, are you fully energized? Can you rest up enough after a war like that? It seems very difficult. But, like I was saying, he seems young enough to be able to pull away and get this done. And then, Mark, we have what I think is an incredibly exciting fight. And you'd almost expect this to be higher up in the card. This is a pay-per-view level fight. We've got Marlon Chito Vera versus Davison Figueiredo. What's your prediction for this fight and why?
I've got to go with Davison. Cheeto is one of the most frustrating fighters to watch. I actually really do love watching him fight, but he doesn't get going. You remember in his last fight with Sugar Sean, he actually had a lot of success, but he just seems to have a 1-2 step out. That's it. And then he just gets tagged. Takes him too long to get going. This is only a 3-rounder. I think time is going to be up for Chito Vera. I think Davison Figueiredo is going to be making waves in the bantamweight division after he got Cody Garbrandt out of there at UFC 300. I think this is Davison's division to stay, and I think he's just got all the tools necessary and what's needed for him to secure the victory.
Yeah, I'm leaning exactly the same. I think Figueiredo is fast, he's strong, he's got all the tools like you were saying. And Marlon is just too slow. This is a 3-rounder, and you cannot be slow in a 3-rounder. You cannot go, right, it's the second round. Halfway through the second round, I'll pick it up now. You've already lost a round. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's going to be his big downfall. But we have seen Marlon Chito Vera dust off a lot of old men. And Davison Figueiredo is an old bloke. He's much smaller. And Cheeto's got that big KO power. Do you think that could happen? Do you think he could catch him with like some wicked leg kick or something?
I don't think he's going to be able to be honest. I honestly believe that exactly like we've both just reiterated there, Cheeto just doesn't get going enough. And if he hasn't learned by now, when he's 23-9, then I don't think that he ever will learn. I don't believe that you can turn it around. He's actually still quite young, but he just doesn't seem to learn from that. He's very, very frustrating to watch. When he turns it on, you think you could be one of the best in the world. You could be champion, but he just doesn't have that ability. So it seems.
Yeah, it's really strange, isn't it? He is so slow and he just waits and waits and waits. And I get out like a feeling out process. A lot of fighters say that. Like Tom Aspinall the other day at 3 or 4, he said, the reason I didn't throw anything for the first 30 seconds is that's my game plan. First 30 seconds, see what they're doing, see what their range is, then bang, turn it on. Anderson Silva, I think it was like he said he didn't fight, he didn't throw anything for the first 6 minutes of his fights. He just liked to feel it out. But the thing is, when you're as slow as Cheeto, you cannot wait that long. You've got to keep
No.
going. And especially in a division like this, with bantamweight, they're so fast, they're so quick, and there's not a lot of KO power in this sort of division. If you're in a big, heavy division, you can get away with that kind of stuff. But chasing these finishes are so unlikely. But, Mike, if Figgy gets the win here, do you think that could really, really move him up towards that title picture? And because it's difficult, because obviously we've got Umar and Cory Sandhagen then as well vying for the title as well.
Absolutely. I think this is one of the most healthy division swaps that I've seen for a while now. Usually, when a fighter goes up in weight class, when they're an ex-champion, they just expect to get a title shot straight away. I like this approach. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Davison, he would take a title shot if he was offered it, but I like this approach that they've got. Okay, so you beat Cody Garbrandt via submission. If you can get through Chito Vera, look, you've just knocked off two massive names, whether you love or hate Cody and Chito. He's just knocked him off. You've proved your worth in this division now. You're not just running off the old, I used to be the flyweight champion. Well, yeah, so did Brandon. So did someone else. Like, as in, let's keep this going here. I think if he does get through Cheeto, he's well and truly secured himself a shot up there. Like you said, we'll have to see what happens with Corey and Umar and Marab and Sean. But he's well going to be looming around that title shot.
Definitely. And I think this just sort of goes to show how good this bantamweight division is. I think it's genuinely my favorite division across the whole UFC. I think, you've got legends in here, you've got some of the best fighters in the world. Look at this top division straight away, and you're talking about all these guys, 6 people all shuffling around, maybe vying for a title very shortly. And I think they're going to get a lot of new contenders as well in this division because it seems as though Dana White's going to scrap the flyweight division. It feels like he is primed and ready to get rid of it because if you've noticed, there's a lot of flyweights who are not getting their contracts extended, and it feels as though it's much easier going, right, okay, all these contracts are gone. Now we're going to scrap this division because he wanted to do it once before. And then you've got people like Pantoja, Brandon Moreno, Royval, Kai Kara France, and even Steve Erceg, who can all now move up and make the bantamweight division even bigger and even better.
It's a really, really good opportunity, that, and it's something I'd love to see as a fan. Let's just get rid of that division. Look, it's been dead for a little bit. It had its resurgence with the quadrilogy, with Brandon and Figgy, but other than that, who's really that bothered? Come on, just have a couple of chicken dinners, cheeseburgers, and move up to bantamweight, lads. Come on, let's make this division the most packed and interesting division. You want absolute chaos. That's the great thing about, some of these divisions. Some of them, they do fall dead on their ass. But this has the ability and the possibility to just be absolute chaos. And as fans, we can just sit back and watch, especially with it being on at a perfect time this weekend for us UK fans.
I know.
This is
8 o'clock.
we're clawing it back after UFC 3 or 4 was still on at 4 or 5 in the morning. We're now getting a card that's on at a perfect time.
Yeah. Well, talking of clawing it back, we've got Tony Ferguson desperately facing off against Michael Chiesa this Saturday. Mark, what's your prediction for this fight and why?
This weekend, Michael Chiesa has the unfortunate responsibility of taking old Yeller into the barn
Oh.
and putting him to sleep. Or in this case, Tony Ferguson. It's gone from it's Tony time to it's time, Tony. Come on. If he loses this one, he's on an 8-fight losing streak, the most in UFC history. He just looks like a shadow of his former self. He's just a shell of the fighter that a lot of fans absolutely adored. I never got on the Tony train, but I can
No.
appreciate what he did for the sport and how big he was and how much of a success he was. I just think Chiesa's going to be hungry. I think he's going to submit him early, maybe even round one.
Yeah, I'm thinking exactly the same as you. It's strange. I think we've got almost the exact same
I think
predictions for this
exact all
whole
of them,
card.
have been the same.
But with Tony, it's less about his physicality. That's my big problem. It's his decision making. I think it's been so poor over these last 8 fights. He's been just sort of hurtling himself into ward submission attempts. And Chiesa is no slouch on the ground. He's fantastic on the ground. And I think exactly the same as you. He's going to get Tony out of there early. But Mike, what I find super strange about this, because we are missing a fight on this card, and that is
Mm,
Nick Diaz versus Vicente Luque, and that was cancelled due to travel issues. That can be all sorts, could be visas. There's loads of different problems, whatever. I don't really want to particularly get into that because I don't know anything about it. But what I find so strange is why would you have Nick Diaz and Tony Ferguson on the same card and not have them scrap? That would have been a much better fight. It's not necessarily a fight I want to see, but it's a fight that I think would be more fair. I think it'd be a good way for both of them. Right, okay, we're all both old bastards. Let's go out here, have a scrap, and let's finish our careers together. Two legends of the sports, and a fight that either of them could win, right?
exactly. And just to add to that as well, let's not forget that Tony Ferguson has fought Nate Diaz. So imagine him fighting both brothers.
Yeah.
I thought it made so much more sense. Two seasoned dudes who are a lot slower than what they used to be. Sorry, Tony and Nick fans, it's just true. They
Yeah.
just are. It's like they're stuck in the mud. Put them against each other. The UFC is going to be the absolute best of the best, and we all know that their best days are behind them. But I don't see anyone complaining about that fight. I'm not even a huge Tony or Diaz brothers fan, but I'd love to see that fight over Nick Diaz versus Vicente Luque. That's a dangerous fight for Nick Diaz, is that? And I'm imagining that it's going to get rescheduled again. And you think, after his last outing, 2021, he looked so poor against Robbie Lawler. I think that's
Yeah.
just, again, taking the dog behind the bike sheds and just
Yeah.
getting rid of the bugger.
Oh, but yeah, like I forgot it was that long ago, 2021. It's now 2024. That is such a long time to age even more, isn't it? It's just,
Mhm.
it's not the right fight to be making. Nick versus Tony is the correct fight that they should have done. And I'm not quite sure why the UFC didn't do that. Usually they're pretty good with matchmaking, but I don't know. Very, very
It
poor.
just feels like a missed opportunity, doesn't it?
Yeah,
That's
it
it.
really does. Wasted opportunity. But I'm really, really looking forward to this card. And like Mark said earlier, it's going to be starting at 8 o'clock in the evening for the English fans. And thank God for that. Genuinely, I'm really, really happy with it. Right. Thank you, everyone, for watching. If you can like, comment, and subscribe, it really does help us out.